Hello, Ollie.
Hello, Brogan.
Hello, and welcome to Getting There, the podcast. We are not in our usual surroundings. We are here in lovely, but it's quite overcast, isn't it?
I don't know why it's been. Every Monday seems to be overcast recently.
Has it?
But anyway,
Well,
the
listen,
sun does shine here, apparently.
But you don't get a suntan.
No. You do a little bit, but there is a protective layer. I actually think it's a lot of the sand and dust.
Yeah, and all the work, what's it called?
All the smog.
Yeah, all the smog.
Yeah.
But I know you're a busy man. You could be, abseiling down buildings, going to war, saving people. But yet you choose to be here. So thank you for your time.
Far more comfortable and
Okay.
more suited to who I am these days.
That's great. I started looking into your life, so I told you, didn't I? My agent was like, "You have to interview this guy." And I was like, "Oh my god!" So I started going down the rabbit hole of your life, and then I was like, nearly died by a chimpanzee when they were 10. So I was like, "Oh, that can't be right. Let me Google that again." And I was like, "What do you mean? How on earth do you nearly die at 10 years of age with a chimpanzee? That has got to be like the rarest form of near death for a 10-year-old."
Well, it was my first memory of life on this planet. I can't remember anything before that.
Right.
Extremely, the odd thing here and there, but nothing in detail whatsoever. But that, Burton on Trent, what year was it? 1980, I was 10 years old. So they had no health and safety in those times back then. Chipperfield Circus had turned it up in town. And we went down there, excited little boys, me, my brother and his best mate, went to the big top. This guy said, "Look, just have a look around. You could get in a circus with wild animals, no health and safety." Wow. And me being this crazy, inquisitive little kid, I separated from my brother and I went over to the split in the canvas on the other side, which was clearly the door. And I pulled it to one side. The sun hit me in the eyes, blurred my vision for a second. But as soon as that vision cleared, I saw the most beautiful little creature in front of me. And that was a little baby chimp. And I was it's just this tiny little thing on the grass, just on its own. It was in this sort of enclosed area with other tents and trailers and everything else. And I was so fucking in love with Tarzan at that age in my life. I watched it that morning. I watched it every single day. I loved Tarzan. So that was that's Cheetah. That's Tarzan's sidekick. Yeah. I was so compelled, but cautious. I'd never met a chimp before. And before I knew it, I was stood over the chimp, and it was this moment that I'll never forget. And this chimp just looked up at me with these beautiful big brown eyes, and it was incredible. It was almost like we connected. And then the chimp reached for something on the floor and started passing it to me. And I'm like, what's that? And I realised it was food, and I thought, fucking, I'm not eating that. It's disgusting, right? But I'm not going to break the serenity of the moment. It was incredible. So I started taking the food, and I'm like, and throwing it over my shoulder. And this was like, I was now this baby David Attenborough. You know what I mean? It was incredible. And time stood still. It was timeless, and it was just a beautiful blue sky. Back in the days when we used to have beautiful, hot, lovely summer's day. And it was so peaceful. It was the most peaceful moment ever in my life. And we were going through the motions. It seemed like a lifetime, but it clearly wasn't. But all of a sudden, that serenity was broken like a fighter jet cutting through the skies. I heard a roar that I'll take to my grave. And in the shadows, something was moving. That something that was moving was clearly mummy or daddy, around 50 kilograms of chimp heading towards me at Mach 10. I think it was 50 kilos. I didn't get a chance to weigh it, but it was fucking big. Hold on, just step on the scales.
You look big.
So this thing's flying at me, and I'm like, my feet are glued to the floor. I can't move, and I'm like, I need to get out of here. I was just in total deer in the headlights moment. And then just as I plucked up enough courage to make that move, this thing pounced through the air over the chimp in front of me. And all of a sudden, the blue sky turned to black as this thing landed on my chest and pinned me to the floor. And that's when the first fist came down, smashed me straight in the solar plexus. I had nothing left. And then it was like fist after fist, smash, smash. And it was like a drummer in a rock band. I was the drum.
Really?
And then I went to protect myself, and then I could feel the flesh being torn from my arms. And I could feel the flesh being torn off, and I'm looking through my fingers, there's blood flying everywhere. And in that moment, I thought, I'm dying. Now, all I wanted to do physically was just I'm just going to take this. I'm just going to see where, I wasn't going to try and defend myself or do anything. But then all of a sudden, something happened in me some place I went to that I never knew existed. And I heard a voice that said, "This doesn't end today. You don't die today." And that gave me enough courage to dislodge the chimp. I got my knee up to my chest, smashed out as hard as possible, whacked it to the floor, and that was my moment for escape. And I was scurrying across the floor on my back, and I realised this is pointless. And when I was watching the chimp, I'd upped the game now. So, and this chimp was like going mental. It was screaming out, all blood in its teeth. And it got to its feet, and it came at me at Mach 20, you know, on the final attack to take me out. And it was an inch from my nose before the chain caught it. And if it wasn't for the chain, then I wouldn't be here today, which my ex-wife would be fucking elated about. And then the whole place erupted. So I stood up, there was blood everywhere. There was a big chunk out my arm there. You can still see a bit of the scar there.
Oh my God. Rushed to hospital?
Yeah, my brother finally turned up, bless him, and his best mate. But yeah, I mean, regardless of the physical scars and trauma, I nearly lost my arm some weeks later. I'll tell you a very quick story.
Please do. We're here for the story.
The chimp goes on forever, so we could actually do this whole podcast about the chimp. But really, in that moment, though, let me tell you this first before I tell you about that bit. I learned something in that moment, something that wasn't clear in my sort of conscious thoughts, but something that, first of all, that was my first break point. That's the name of my business.
Yeah.
That's when you step into short-term discomfort for long-term gain. The way we're wired is the opposite of that. And the short-term discomfort was fighting a grown chimp at 10. The long-term gain of that discomfort was the fact I'm here to tell the story. The second thing is, regardless of your situation, you always have a choice. You always have it. Even when you're like locked in the corner, you always have a choice. And then the third thing is tapping into that potential that we've all got. Every single one of us has got that inner potential. But our brains are wired to protect us. That's why we live in these limitations. If we're not aware of that, then that really consolidates how we perform and what we achieve in life. But really, that would help me get through Special Forces selection twice, and then from the brink of suicide some years later. So there was all these things that happened, but that's what I took from that. But the mental scars would last a long, long time. And this is what we do with trauma, right? This is what I truly believe. Because I analyze this, I mean, there's so much I take from this experience. I actually do look at this experience, and I believe you should always look. If you're going to recall an experience, if it's going to be bringing up trauma, you need to reframe it. You know, and I did that with the help of ayahuasca some years later. But for me, you know, I would call it, I actually really appreciate that situation happened to me. That sounds bizarre.
No, I understand.
Sounds bizarre, but I really do. But anyway, some weeks later, we then went off to France. We used to go every year for about 3 weeks, family holiday, big long, one of those big, they call them mobile, the massive camper thing, but they're static out there in France. And my dad is like going around the caravan and he's like sniffing, he can smell something. And he's putting bleach down the sinks, he's changing the bin, all this, that and the other. And then he walks past me and I'm just minding my own business. And he's like, take your bandages off. So I started taking the bandage off. And the more I took it off, you then could see this green coming through the bandage. Anyway, I managed to take it all off and it was just totally encased with gangrene.
Could you not feel that, though?
No. Well, I mean, I could feel the pressure. I mean, you imagine an injury like that and a wound, it's like slowly getting worse and worse each day. The smell of it, you're getting used to. So, you know, so I took that off and he realized it was gangrene, got me in the car straight away, or a taxi, straight to Saint-Tropez, got me into this doctor's place, rushed me up the stairs, chucked me on this operating table. And my dad literally had his knee in my chest while the doctor is scrubbing this out with ethanol, with a scrubbing brush. And that, for me, was like worse than the chimp. You know what I mean? I was screaming the place down. But anyway, after that, through whatever reason, whether the doctor felt guilty, he just tortured this bloke's son, he took us into this like waiting room. It was beautiful. There was paintings on the roof. It was just so gorgeous. But my dad was introduced to this amazingly beautiful, not that I cared, but I just wanted love off my dad who just helped with the torture. So he was like, my dad's introduced to this woman, and he's kissing her cheek to cheek, beautiful blonde woman. And anyway, we leave and we go down the stairs again. We get to the bottom of the stairs and my dad looks down at me. I'm like thinking, oh, my dad's gonna love me. And he looks down at me and goes, son, I can't believe it. I've just met Brigitte Bardot.
Was it actually Brigitte Bardot?
Yeah. It was Brigitte Bardot in the waiting room.
Oh my goodness.
I didn't even know who Brigitte Bardot was at 10 years old. Do you know what I mean? And, you know, it was like from the chimp to Bardot. And the story of the chimp goes on for a long, long time. You know, we could talk about that for ages, but it was just incredible.
How did that shape your mindset and approach towards fear then? Because
Well, to be honest, it made me build an army around me so hard, and it made me always look for this armor, and then it then projected me. And obviously we can only work this stuff out when we've got mature in our years.
Hindsight as well.
Hindsight, but hindsight never won any wars, did it?
No.
But it's great for reflection. But the thing is, for me, it wasn't until years later when I crashed and burned dramatically, and it was that point where I was contemplating. I wasn't contemplating suicide. I don't say that. I was thinking about it too much, and we all know what happens when you think about something on a prolonged basis. It happens. So really, for me, looking back at that moment when I was like from the phoenix, from the ashes, in that moment, it was my greatest battle, but my greatest discovery. I realized what I'd been doing all of my life was I was looking for this battle. So that's why I built this army around me. Like, we came from sort of a decent, well-to-do family, kind of. I searched for the hardest family in my local town, befriended these people, not just subconsciously. I got this army around me. Then I joined the Royal Marines, which was the biggest boys' army you can ever imagine. Then I joined the Special Forces, which was like the hardest army you can ever imagine. Then I wanted to go to war. I was addicted to war. Even when I left the Special Forces, said I'd never go back to a war zone, I was dragged back into a war zone. I was there for 4 years as a mercenary then. And then I went to Southeast Asia. That was unplanned, but then I was getting kids, rescuing kids from child prostitution and slavery.
We're going to get on to that.
Again, in that sort of danger, although that was one of the best things I've ever done, it was always this battle. But I realized in that moment when I crashed and burned that the battle that I was hunting for was not out there. It was in here. And that's where I needed to address it. Because every time I got to this place where I thought it was going to be, I just didn't feel like I'd achieved anything. Even when I got to the Special Forces, I didn't feel like I was meant to be there. I got to these war zones, I didn't feel, the dots didn't connect. It didn't feel like I was meant to be there. And it only when I realized in that moment that the war's inside me, not out there. And this is what we do, don't we?
But you obviously realised that then.
Yeah, realised that. But this is what we do. We've been made to believe, or programmed to believe, that the power of who we are is external. And also the fact that we can blame everything is external. Happiness is external. We think that, and this is like people, let's take a relationship, right?
Yeah.
You know what, I'm going to finish that relationship, I'm going to move somewhere else, and it's going to be a fresh start.
Yeah.
It's only a fucking fresh start until that honeymoon period's over, then you're back with your old self. Because you can't change anything unless you change the energy of who you are. And so for me, that was a realization that changed my life. It was an epiphany where I started to realize this needs addressing, not
But that was after the Marines and everything. That was
after everything. That was like after all the Marines, after the mercenary stuff, after the child rescues, and I came back from there and crashed and burned, absolutely floored myself, alcohol, drugs, everything, to the point where I couldn't go any further. First time in my life, I took responsibility for where I was. I stopped blaming the outside world for my failures. I stopped blaming all the military, the chimp, and this, that, and the other. I was there because of my choices, and I could do something about it. But the whole point about taking responsibility, being accountable for who you are, where you are, once you do that, that then alleviates all this blame, victim mentality.
Was that through the ayahuasca?
No, that wasn't even, I'd not even hit ayahuasca by that stage.
Well, let's take it back, because you're just saying about all these amazing things that I know people are going to know more about.
Yeah.
So you sign up for the military, right? Knowing full well you want to go to war. Now, is there something that you seem like a common denominator in the people that are signing up for the military? Like are they traumatized children? Are they missing a community? Obviously, I can't say children, young adults. It must take a lot to put yourself in those kind of situations.
Yeah, I don't speak for everyone here, but the majority of people that join the Special Forces especially, or even the military in general, are running from something. They're running from something, but to be part of something.
Yeah.
So a lot of people, they probably come from broken families. A lot of people are missing that sort of identity, that sort of brotherhood. And like we said before, it's that desire for community. And really for me, there was a massive part of that. A lot of us, there's some pretty messed up people in the military. But when I say messed, I wouldn't say messed up. Look, they've had some colourful upbringing. So a lot of people that have been in trouble with the police and this, that and the other. But regardless of whether it's right or wrong, it's really people that have had life experience. A lot of life experience. You're going to suffer if you join the military and you've really been sheltered by your family, lived a very privileged life. So pretty much a lot of people, I think the majority, especially in the Special Forces, they've got a little bit of a story.
Would you fight for your country now, given
No,
what's going on?
absolutely not. No. I just realised so much of what we did and where we used to go, not just the stuff I've done and where I've been, but the wars have just been all about, you've got to follow the money, haven't you? You follow the money and people behind shiny doors and Downing Street sending our boys to war, and then, you know, for the acts of valour, if you want to call it that, then because they've done something that doesn't follow a protocol, then we're looking to sue those people and put them up for war crimes and not protect them. I mean, would you let your son join at that?
No, definitely not.
No, absolutely not.
Do you feel that, obviously, I don't want to say exposing, but just so I can have an understanding of like the military and war, do you feel that you guys were kind of used as like bait or like pawns in the game as such?
Have you read any of my stuff? Because I
No.
tell you now, the first time I
Never.
realised that, not so much in the Special Forces, because this is what pushed me for the Special Forces.
Yeah.
I realised being in the Royal Marines, I went to Northern Ireland on my first tour, and it was actually, I don't know why it was just this one day I was walking across this open expanse, and that's where everything always happens. And I don't know, I just had this almost like an epiphany again. It was like, I just realised in that moment that they sent us out on the ground to do all these things, these little missions, and I just went, there aren't any missions. We're bait. We're bait so that they can, you know, for the IRA to attack, so that they can follow up. And whether I'm right or wrong, I believe that was the truth. We are bait. So very much in that sort of more bigger sort of green army type environment. And that's really what pushed me for, you know, I realised I wasn't going to get what I was looking for there. I realised we were just part of it, you know.
But with all the work, I mean, there's 2 wars going on right now. I mean, for me, it feels like, I don't want to put it out there, but it could be World War III. How much of it, as the public, do you think we get told is the truth? Or how much of it do you think we actually
I don't
get
think
told?
anything. You know what? It's like a newspaper, right? The only truth in the newspaper is the date. And I honestly don't take anything, even if it sounds good. I'm always like, I want to believe the good. I want to believe the good. But even the stuff I see in the paper, the stuff I feel that's been released, the stuff that happens that is quite controversial, I just think, what's happening behind that?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I'm always looking behind. But the thing is, I think it's really important, right? Because I have got a lot to sort of focus on and go, well, that's not right. And there's a lot of people doing this at the moment. That's not right. That's not, you know, this isn't good. That's a lie. Now, and a lot of people have said, look, you've got a big platform on social media. Why don't you use that to sort of really stand up and shout your voice? And I made that decision. First of all, if I did that, I'd be deplatformed in a heartbeat. The second thing is that I find a lot more strength from empowering people as opposed to pointing out all the things that is wrong in our world, our society, and everything else. And the bottom line is that don't get anxious about things you can't control. Because all you're doing by that, you're getting frustrated and angry about all the stuff that's going on, whether it's a lie or not, whatever you believe, you're just doing exactly what they want you to do. You're creating this very negative, low vibration. And you're down here, you're suppressed, you're angry all the time. So really, I call it 1 meter square. This is something that we, in the Special Forces, we used to embrace. And that's when chaos is reigning, bring everything back to 1 meter square. Only focus on the things you can control and keep moving forward in that 1 meter square. And you imagine there's a 4-man team, every man doing that 1 meter square ethos. Wow. You don't get overwhelmed by all the bigger picture stuff. You know, it's like, which you can't control anyway. No, so for me and for my wife and how we operate, just focus on our 1 meter square, look after us, keep our vibration high, keep ourself positive. And I'm not going to get angry because, you know.
But I know you did a stint, didn't you, of no media?
Yeah.
I bet that was amazing.
What do you mean?
You did a stint, did you not, of not looking at like the news or the media?
I do it, I still do it.
Right, okay.
Yeah, no, because I went into a house in, that sounds weird. When I came back, 2014, I wanted to, I'd come across this concept after going through this sort of suicidal thoughts and everything else. And this is why I say it was my greatest battle, but my greatest discovery, because it was the first time I realized that we're not victims of our genes. We're not victims of our past trauma. We can do and create whatever we want. We were put on this earth to create, not discover. Okay, because nothing is created or destroyed. It's already here. So we were here to create from that template. So for me, I came back and I came up with this sort of epiphany. I come back from rescuing the kids. I then went through my own mental health battles. And one side of me said, right, this is just who you are. You fucked up. This is who you are. This is Ollie Ollerton. You're just addicted to alcohol. I don't say addicted, actually. I say dependent on alcohol. I don't wrap into that rubbish. But I was dependent on alcohol. I was dependent on drugs, this, that, and the other. And one part of me would say, well, that's just who you are. You know, we can blame it on the chimp, blame it on that's just who Ollie Ollerton is. But for the first time I realized neuroplasticity, we can change we can be whoever we want to be. Yeah. And once I realized that we can change and manipulate our destiny, that was like, oh my God, it was like 43 years. And I went, oh, Jesus Christ, I can change this. So anyway, I went into a house in Cornwall when I first got back in 2014 after 10 years, a 10 stretch in Australia. And I wanted to help other people. That this is my whole dream. After helping those kids, after helping myself, that was the that was the DNA of Breakpoint, to create a globally identified brand recognized for the positive growth and development of others. And I came back to the UK, I thought, you still were a bit fucked up. Do you know what I mean? So, and broken people break people. You know, it's like everyone...
Hurt people.
Yeah, exactly. And people aren't egogram. Everyone's now a coach.
Yeah.
Do you know?
Before you got in here, we were talking. You know, I told you I went on that process and I shared a room with someone.
Yeah.
They were like, oh, I'm a life coach. And I was like, oh my God, that's amazing. Where did you qualify? She's like, oh no, you can do it on YouTube.
But this is the thing, isn't it? And a lot of these people, they're so fucked up themselves, but the only way they can they offload that on, and you've got to feel sorry for the people that they're then coaching.
Yeah. Because everyone's desperate and vulnerable.
Yeah, no, exactly. So, and I didn't want to be. The bottom line is the most powerful energy anyone's got, as you probably know, is authenticity. So anyone that's not authentic, I couldn't be one of those people. I had to be authentic. You know what I mean? It's like, I think, right, I need to focus on me. I didn't know I was going in there for 3 months.
Yeah.
And I went into this, I tried all my conventional methods that I'd usually done by getting a credit card, getting a loan, and then starting this. And this is, as I talked to you about before, unless you change the energy of who you are, nothing changes. So my old model was get a loan, get some credit cards, start a business, start little content, start this, and it would always fail because it would always, I'd have that for a little bit and then I'd just go back into the person I was anyway, so everything would fail. So anyway, I tried that when I got back to the UK because I wanted to start this company called Breakpoint. Get the loan, no one would give me anything. I'd been out of the country for 10 years and I had no file whatsoever in the UK. So the first time I did that, I was forced into, my back was against the wall. And all I had a sniff of was this thing called spirituality and meditation. And someone put me onto that. And I had an experience in my life which sort of confirmed there was something in it. And I locked myself away. I said, right, I am changing who I am. I'm going to just focus. I'm the most important project there is. I'm going to focus on 3 things, mind, body, and nutrition. I'm not going to drink. Well, sorry, I'm going to control the drinking, not drink in the week, drink at weekends. I never thought I could stop drinking. I'm going to switch off the TV. I'm never going to buy a newspaper. I'm not going to look at social media. I'm going to make sure everything that I consume is of the highest quality of who I want to be. I did, what's the needles?
Oh, acupuncture?
Acupuncture, I did all kinds of stuff that I never even knew worked. Even meditation, I was like, this is, like the old Ollie was laughing at me going, you're a fucking idiot. All my old mates told you he was an idiot, had this 1,000-person audience around me every day telling me I was an idiot. But I just pushed through. I thought, I'm going to try this. It's all I've got. I've got nothing else. So every day I meditated, every day I visualized at the same time as the meditation. Every day I worked on my goals, started building this business concept and everything. And at that time, I didn't know anything about the TV show or anything. I just reconnected before I went in the house with my mate Foxy. I'd not seen for 13 years. And I came up with this concept in my head. I wanted to start this business called Breakpoint, where we got people in, we put them through a special forces selection type process. We really took them to the edge of their limitations and then pushed them over.
To their breakpoint.
Yeah, to their breakpoint, and got them to really step inside the facade of who they created for the outside world to really start to work with their strengths and weaknesses, all this concept. And I focused on that every day. So every single day, and there was another thing I focused on, that I'd be on stage talking to people, hundreds of people. But when I say I visualized it, I could feel the expensive watch on my arm, the shoes on my feet, the shirt on my back. I could smell the air, could taste it in my spit.
And how long were you doing that for?
I was doing it up to the point of about 3 months, and I realised this. In my head went, "This is a load of shit. It doesn't work. Nothing was happening. The phone wasn't ringing. Nothing was changing. My family was starting to get worried about me. They said, go back to Iraq, get some more money in."
At least you know where you are in
Yeah,
Iraq.
yeah. But the thing is, for me, I call it peace in war, right? Because back in Iraq, for me, and this one, I didn't tell my family about how traumatic it was for me back there. But really, for me, I call it peace in war because, and this is what a lot of soldiers, they are drawn back to that because it's quite black and white.
It's familiar as well.
Yeah, familiar.
So if you've got that war in your head, that external, it's only a reflection of what's going on.
And that, being at war and being shot at, is so much more comfortable than going around the Tesco's with a shopping trolley, navigating the aisles. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's peace in war.
Right, guys, when I'm about to film, I need to be focused, but without the anxiety and jitters I used to get from coffee. So whenever I'm filming, my favourite to use is the Zen Blend. It's great for that kind of like afternoon slump where you need a bit of energy, but you don't want to be scared that you're not going to sleep that night. I can literally have this up until 3-4 o'clock and I still sleep like a baby at 9 o'clock at night. Let me know how you get on with yours. Use Getting There in the discount code for 20% off.
So when you were developing the course, did you do everything you can so they felt powerless?
100%, because this is the template that we come from. You know, it's exactly the same process when it comes to, I mean, the thing you see on TV isn't anywhere near like SAS selection. But the thing is, some of those aspects are the fact that we take away control, the fact that we take away, for the first time ever, and the word I'd like to use, and it's a word that I had to embrace when it came to my trauma and stuff, was surrender, all right? Now, any human doesn't like that word or what it means. Anyway, try to tell a Special Forces soldier, a soldier anyway, to surrender. That's not a good word.
They probably hear failure.
Yeah, absolutely. So surrender is the only way that you've got to hand over control to the DS. You've got to basically, because at the end of the day, everyone, when you can't control, you live in fear.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So you're always going to fear the outcome. Fear is just a mental and emotional rehearsal for something you don't want to happen. So, I mean, the way through it at the end of the day is we're an interesting species, aren't we, that we use yesterday and the day before to predict who we want to be in the future, but we rarely live in the day. And this is half the problem, the fact that we don't live in the moment. You know, we're forever digging up the past, literally, to find our history, and we're ever searching into the future, AI and everything else to evolve, but we never are actually told to live in the moment. Yeah. And really, that's the way you get through that. You know, if you can't predict what's going to happen, why think about it? Yeah. Just do, and that goes back to the 1 meter square. You know, in that moment when you can't predict the outcome, 1 meter square, take care of yourself right now in this moment, and just keep moving forward. We are just like, we're 75% water, aren't we? Yeah. If we stand still, we go stagnant.
Well, it's like the Alcoholic Anonymous saying, isn't it? It's give me the courage to change the things I can.
I'm glad you came up with that.
Yeah, do you know it? I
used
to know it by heart.
Yeah.
But it's the power to accept the things I cannot.
There you go.
That's it.
That's the one.
Yeah. And it's so true. But what did the Marines teach you then?
That I didn't want to be in the Marines.
Yeah. That you was a fucked up kid looking for.
Yeah, I was a fucked up kid, and it's. I mean, I love being in that. I love the whole challenge of it. I love being in it. I'm proud I was in it. I'm more proud than I was when I was actually in it. I am proud that I went through that process. But really, for me, it did. I mean, the stuff I take away from it is the fact, the discipline and everything else. I already had that discipline anyway from my, from my dad. But the thing is, it further amplified that. And it's one thing it did teach me is the ability to understand the fact that I could achieve anything. And the fact that so many people, even getting into the Marines, told me that I couldn't do it. So many people were so negative around me doing it. And even when I went to the Special Forces, when I told the guy that was in charge of me in the Marines that I'm going to go for the Special Forces, he laughed in my face. You know, and that for me was like a red flag to a bull.
That's how I would have took that, yeah.
Absolutely a red flag to a bull, which is good in some respects. But the thing is, when I look at the Special Forces stuff, I look at it now, and I'm proud of what I've achieved. But whether it was right for me, I don't know. Whether it was something else, I don't know. But the thing is, there were so many things in my way to get through If you believe in the universe and destiny and everything else, it was almost telling me I shouldn't be doing it. Like some of the obstacles I had to get through was just...
Can you tell me about them? What did you have to do to get into?
But the thing is that I got the first selection, right? So
selection. So come on,
selection
we're
is
talking to a novice
the
here.
6-month process of getting into the special forces from the military already.
Right. So you're already extremely fit, disciplined.
Yeah.
In the military,
Yeah.
and 6 months of basically celebrity SAS every day, them just terrorising
for 6 months, and you go through different phases of special forces selection. So you go from being a soldier to then going on this horrendous process.
Which is like what?
Well, I mean, it's like the first 2 weeks are you're like in the Welsh mountains. You've got some like mountains to climb. You've got a mountain on your back as a backpack, massive weight in it, and like. When you look at these mountains and they say, right, you've got to go from point A to point B, you've got to navigate through the night and everything else, and you've got to get here in that time, the brain goes, no, it can't be done. And when you just look at the enormity of those mountains and you're like, you've got to climb over that, go. And like your head just goes, no, it can't be done, it's ridiculous, forget it. But it's the mind game that you go through to like, no, I'm gonna throw myself into this. And that's for 2 weeks. Every day being smashed. You take your boots off every night, honestly, you're wringing your socks out with blood.
Do they
Seriously.
not hurt? Or do they hurt?
Oh, they're killing it. And the first hour of you marching the next day is getting through the pain barrier.
And then what, after a while, it just stops hurting?
It stops hurting, yeah.
Does it really?
It doesn't stop hurting. You just get used to the pain. And that's every day. The blisters and everything get worse. Every time you take your socks off, you're peeling them off your feet.
Oh my God.
And then you do that, then you're off to the jungles. If you pass that, about 60-70% of people fail that part the first 2 weeks, like 250 thereabouts were there on day one of my selection. By the time I got through, there was about 60-70% of those had gone.
And that's the mountain
That's
trekking.
the 2 weeks,
Yeah, okay.
first 2 weeks. You pass that, you then go to the jungles, which is 6 weeks in the jungle, pretty much nothing. And then you get in there and your body, as soon as you start to get into the jungle, your body starts to rot. Like decay, like your feet, you get trench foot because they're constantly damp. Like your body just is shedding all that. It's like rotting.
And where are you sleeping?
You're sleeping on a hammock in the middle of the jungle or on the jungle
Where were you?
floor.
Which jungle were you in?
I was in Malaysia, in Brunei.
Wow.
So I did all that and got through that, and then that process really. That is one of the major tests. You get through the hills, you get through the jungle.
But what are you doing in the jungle?
Well, you're doing all your fighting. The thing is, you've got to learn to fight and be a soldier.
Yeah.
So all like these, all weapon skills and everything, all shooting, all range work and everything with weapons and everything, shooting over people's shoulders, there's a lot going on. But the thing is, your soldiering comes after you looking after yourself. Like a little nick on there can turn into a massive infection. So the admin of being in the jungle is like nothing you would believe. So you've got to concentrate on trying to be a soldier, but you've got to concentrate on your personal admin. So there's so much cognitive overload. And the jungle is the best environment to do that because you have got to be on point constantly. So you were just day in, day out being thrashed through the jungle, survival skills, shooting skills, and just the duration.
Are they teaching you while you're there?
Oh,
as
yeah,
well, or
yeah,
they
yeah.
just kind of feed you?
No,
Okay.
teaching you. They're teaching you. It's a basic knowledge of being a Special Forces soldier, where everything goes from being in a bigger unit in the military down to a very small team, where you're like in a 4-man team. So you learn all those jungle skills and everything, and those sort of skills that you learn in the jungle there can be replicated in other environments. The way the formation of the team and everything, and working together and everything else. So it's adaptable everywhere. But the whole thing with the jungle is it's just on top.
Did you not ever go back to your hammock one night and be like, don't fancy a bit of this?
No,
now?
I was so driven. To make it to the end. I was so just focused on that, who I wanted to be at the end. And this is something that, it's like when I look back and actually thought about what I did in that house and everything, I've been doing it all my life. And that was, I got lost in the creative beauty of what I wanted to be. And again, this is what's been stripped away from us as humans. Like, have you ever heard the study about George Land's, commissioned by NASA to go in and find what it took to be a genius?
No.
They went to a load of. First of all, they started to think it was 5-year-olds, and they went. And basically, the way they understood what a genius was is by how you could solve
Rubik's Cube?
Yeah, that kind of thing, but how you could solve problems creatively.
So thinking outside the box.
Yeah, thinking outside the box.
Because they done it at Harvard, didn't they? You had to draw all the things, but what you had to do is you had to go outside the box.
Exactly, yeah, and all those kind of things. So if you could, your ability to problem solve creatively, that's how you basically establish yourself as it identifies you as a genius. They did that on these five-year-olds, and I think it was something like 90% of the kids were
Geniuses.
And then they did it 5 years later, and that had gone down to something like 60% or something. They did it 5 years after that, gone down to 30%. They abandoned the whole thing. But then George Lands kept on the study, and he went and tested on adults. It had gone down to 2%.
Yeah,
and they put it all down to schooling.
Yeah, and I reckon that would even deteriorate quicker now because we're being programmed by so many other things rather than just our schools.
But the thing is, that's the fact that we've society and the schooling and everything else creates the problem. That whole dumbing down is learned. Do you know what I mean? We're all these creative geniuses. That's who we are. That's the power of who we are. So really, for me, that's where I've sort of chopped schooling at 14. I was the one that was, maybe you as well, told stop staring out the window.
Oh yeah, don't sit still, don't throw stuff.
Yeah, don't do that.
Hands.
You know, best thing I could ever do was get sent out of the classroom. I loved it. It's that wasn't a punishment.
There was no punishment to me. But how's your luck? I remember being sent out of the classroom once, and it was like a camper van. So they were like, what wouldn't have been? What are they called? Those like portable.
Oh, the portable. Yeah.
And I remember being
that sounds like a
pulled
cool school.
outside.
Yeah.
I remember my mum just coming in by chance. I remember being like, oh, she's like, what are you doing? I'm not allowed in. I used to get sent out religiously, but I wasn't doing anything that I was thriving in either.
Yeah.
But while you're in these environments in the jungle and you're learning about the four-man teams and stuff, there must be people there you don't like, Ollie. Or what? Do they teach you how to work well, even if
you know what
friction?
this is? You imagine at the back. I mean, when you're on selection, there's some people. The only people you don't like is the people that don't work well. That you wouldn't count on to have your back. That doesn't mean you like them.
Right, got you.
Liking them and relying on them are two very different things. So when you're in the jungle, it's like someone's being a bit of a knob. They're not really very good at the job. I don't want them on the team. I don't want them with me, looking after me. I don't want them, watching my back. You imagine then when you actually go through and you trained as a special forces soldier, people think that you're all best mates, and you're not. You go to war, into situations with people you don't like at all. But the thing is, when there's life on the line, personal difference and ill feeling gets left at the door.
Yeah.
There's something more important than that, and that is your preservation of life. So you can go on operations, you know that guy's gone through the same process as you. So in that moment where you're relying on him, you don't care that you don't like him. But you rely on him and he relies on you, and there's a different kind of relationship and bond in that moment, so it's not about, this is like when you go into the corporate world, so many people hate each other, there's egos doing this all day long, no one gets any work done, the corrosion's all within, but the thing is there's no life on the line, is there? But when your life's on the line, it creates a different dynamic around that.
So while you're in the jungle, at this point, have you seen anyone killed?
No.
When's the first time you saw someone killed?
I'd seen that in Iraq before, so as a Royal Marine, I'd seen that anyway. So,
and how did you cope with that?
I don't know. I mean, Northern Ireland, I saw that as well. As soon as I got to Northern Ireland, one thing I would say, it made me grow up really quickly. Because it's almost like a lot of the stuff I joined for. You get given a brochure and everything, and it's like nice uniform. The chicks are going to love that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's like I can remember the brochure I got right, and it was this brochure. And the middle page was a guy, he's obviously on leave, somewhere like the Bahamas, not that you can ever afford to go to the Bahamas anyway on a military wage, but he's beautiful, you just saw the back of his beautiful blonde girlfriend who's on the beach staring at him while he's on a windsurfer.
Yeah. Very sounds like more like a holiday advert.
I know, and I'm like, whoa, I'm going to get some of that.
Yeah.
And then on the next page is full uniform, and you're like, well, obviously the uniforms.
Yeah.
So a lot of it for me was like all around that, But obviously not obviously, but there was my family's. I come from a military sort of family anyway, so there was a bit of that. But the thing is, a lot of it is sold on that sort of dream of your lifestyle of how amazing it's going to be. But then you actually go to war, then you realise. There was none of that in the brochure. Even the first day when I passed out and I went up to 4-5 Commando in Scotland, and Christmas Eve, it's freezing cold and I'm doing guard duty on the main gate, and I'm like thinking, this is shit.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And then I went to war, and then, you know, I truly believe in that. You asked me a question before about would you go, you know, would you fight the wars? You know, what was the?
Would you fight for your country?
Yeah,
now?
would you fight for your country now? I would in some respects, but not in others. But for me, I don't believe that we're ever meant. It's not a good thing killing someone else. You know, I don't believe that's good for you. Look at all the PTSD and everything else. We're not meant to kill each other. Do you know what I mean?
Karma as well, even in an
Absolutely.
energetic thing.
And I just, you know what? We could go really deep here, but I honestly believe, right, because I know our history is a total lie. You know, the stuff that we're told our history is absolute bullshit. And we've always been depicted as this race that's always killed each other. Haven't we? You know, like fight for land. How do we know that's true? How do we know that's true? I'm not saying it's not. No. I'm just saying, but we've been programmed to believe that we are this race that hates each other.
Yeah.
You know, if you're a different colour, if you're from a different country, you speak a different language, we've got to protect the borders and all this bullshit. Maybe that wasn't true. Maybe we just all got on and it was fucking great.
Yeah, 100%.
I think there's
what
something
about
in
that first day that, I don't know, you kill someone? How does that feel?
Yeah, well, to be honest, right, I've actually had this before, and it's like, people think that everyone in the Special Forces, right, has been cloak and dagger, you've been hand to hand fighting, killing people. And that didn't happen for me. You know, a lot of the work the Special Forces do anyway isn't always about that. You know, if it's got to that point, it's gone terribly wrong.
That long range stuff.
Yeah, long range stuff, and also a lot of the stuff when it comes to the Special Forces is getting intelligence. You know, especially with the SBS. I was part of the SBS, the Special Boat Service. You know, we would go in, we would like make sure, like we would do a beach recce where you check. You go behind enemy lines and you check the draft of the beach, you know, underwater to make sure that the ship can come in. The invasion ships have got the right draft to be able to attack that beach.
Yeah.
You know, so there's a lot of stuff everyone thinks because of Hollywood. Yeah, framework, all that. But everyone thinks because of Hollywood that, you know, Special Forces is all about going in there, killing everyone, stabbing, you know. And it doesn't really happen. It does happen, but it's not like every Special Forces soldier goes through that. For me, personally, I'm very grateful, although I was gagging for it at the time. When I went through my Special Forces and even my career in the military, there wasn't loads going on. You know, and I am very grateful for that now. Although at that time in my life, I just wanted that.
You just wanted a war to erupt.
Yeah, I wanted a war. I wanted to be in battle. But I realise now how bad that is, and I'm glad it never happened. Now, the only time it did happen really for me when it was face to face, when I was looking at someone, was when I'd actually left and I was a mercenary.
So what happened?
Well, I was on a highway in Baghdad, and I was protecting a convoy of people, 12 people, and there was me in one car at the back of that convoy, and we're doing about 120 k's an hour. Anyway, we got attacked by the militia at high speed, and there was 2 cars. Heavily outgunned, heavily outnumbered. I didn't think I was going to make it through, but I'm driving the car, and central reservations on this left-hand side. There's lanes to the right-hand side, and I can remember when these cars are flying up from the back. So the guys sat behind me. We've got like weapons in there that you can't see, hidden away. We've got body armor on, shirts over the top. Civilian car. You don't even know that we are who we are. And then he's telling me, look, this militia coming up from behind, and in that moment, I tell you now, I shit myself. This thing that I wanted so bad, I wanted to be daggers in the throats and full, that thing I wanted, it was all happening, and I hated every second of it. It was disgusting. And I can remember that moment. I just thought, I'm going to die in this moment. And the cars come up, and then I am shitting myself. I'm driving the car, right?
I would be.
I'm driving the car, and I'm thinking, there's 8 of them, there's 2 cars, I'm driving the car, this is not going to end well, there's only 2 of us. And we'd heard intelligence reports about the cars being taken over the side of the road, people's heads coming off, all sorts of stuff. Oh my head is like going, oh my God, I'm going into a flat spin. Then all of a sudden something happened which should have taken me further down that, but it didn't. It did the opposite. They started shooting at us. So next thing I'm driving the car, the guns were all going off. They're shooting at us, AK-47s, loads of them, gunfire's going down. And straight away, without even thinking about it, something happened, and that snapped me back into the Special Forces soldier.
What do you do?
And in that moment, because the cars were right behind us, central reservation here, I took the car, I told the guy, stand by, and I took my car straight over to the next lane over, and they fell for the trap, so they slotted straight into the gap. So now, here's me, They're on my left. There's a car in front of them. They can't go forward. They can't go left because of the central reservation. And it was in that moment where I was looking. This moment, it happened so quick, but it was the slowest moment of my life. When I looked down at this guy, and he only looked young. I could only see his eyes because he had a headdress on. And I'm looking at him in the eyes, and I've got my little submachine gun on my lap. I've got one hand on the steering wheel, and I'm looking at him in the eye, trying to use telepathy or something to say, I don't want to do this. He looked like a young lad, and those eyes just told me he didn't want to be there. And it was almost as he's doing that, and I'm looking at him, his AK-47's coming straight onto my head, and in that moment I realised that it had to happen. And I just gave the order to open fire, pulled up my weapon straight onto my arm, blasted through my window straight into his car. And this is all happening at 120, 130 k's an hour. And then it had the desired effect. The car, my guy in the back was doing the same thing to his guy in the back. Yeah. Big gunfight went off, and the car veered off into the central reservation. We put a foot down and got out of there. And that was the first time I could touch the guy. You know what I mean? We could have like...
Was he a human? Because
yeah.
obviously you're conditioned to being like, they're a number.
Exactly.
Even like when we talk about countries, Ukraine, Russia, we don't see them as people, we see them as numbers or labels, and it's the first time you probably had a connection.
Yeah, exactly.
And how did you sleep after that?
Well, to be honest, that whole affair was like, this goes on to something bigger, and this is why when I went into that house, when I came back to the UK, I started to get into visualization and everything. And I did it because of that experience that day on the highway. Because what happened the day before that is I'd imagined it. The very attack.
How?
Because basically I was going to Baghdad to pick someone up who was going to value the need for security. It was his job to offload us because the statue had come down. Yeah. Saddam had been, taken out of power. The whole place had sort of, it's
erupted.
Now... Yeah, well, it hadn't. It was like, it had, but then it was like, Iraq is now free. We now know that it was the start of the real war, which happened after that. But everyone was trying to offload us because we're very expensive. And that's what they do when it's less threat, offload the security than a very expensive security detail. And I had to go and pick up the guy that was making that decision. So I had to go, and I thought, I want to look at this guy in the eyes and tell him he was making a mistake, that this was the calm before the storm. And the day before, when I'm driving up there, it's a 12-14 hour journey because there was no flights because of the surface-to-air missile threat. So we had to drive that long journey. And as I'm driving along, I'm thinking, words are just pointless. I did not know the words that I was going to say to this guy, look him in the eye and say, look, you're making a mistake, this, that, and the other. I didn't know what they were. But then, me being that creative being, the boy that looked out the window at school, I started thinking of all the things that could happen that would cement the need for us in stone. So that exact spot the day before, as I'm driving down there between Ramadi and Fallujah, I imagined that very attack. I could smell the cordite from the bullets in the air. I went through every detail of it. So the second time it happened that very next day, when I drove away from that attack with my ears ringing, wind coming through that door, all I could think about was, that's the second time it's happened.
And when that actual event was happening, were you talking to yourself like, oh my God, it's actually...
Not right at that moment, but I tell you, just before the attack went in, because I'd come up with that scenario in my head, it would happen between Ramadi and Fallujah. As soon as they started shooting, I saw a sign that said Ramadi. And straight away I went, oh my God. The thing that I dreamt about happening the day before was actually happening, and I felt this, you idiot. It was happening. The thing that I really wanted to happen was happening. When it was happening, it was horrible. It was horrible.
Was that not enough to make you leave that career?
No, because I call it fool's gold, because I was being paid a fortune. And this is the thing, I call it fool's gold because I wouldn't do that now for any amount of money to compromise who I was. And that then, after that attack, I was extremely dependent on alcohol, dependent on Valium to get me through, and I did that for 4 years.
Wow.
And it wasn't until I managed to break the cycle of that and get away from there and get away from that paycheck Then I managed to escape from Iraq.
What's the difference then between a mercenary and someone in the special forces?
Well, really, someone a mercenary, generally speaking, that's a lot of people would call us mercenaries. It's a contractor.
So just
But
privately
it's
hired.
someone that will do, if you look mercenary up in the dictionary, it's someone that will fight any war for a paycheck, that kind of thing. But at the end of the day, I mean, the stuff we were doing in Iraq was absolutely amazing. We were actually working pro-Iraqi projects. I had 2000. After I left, I was looking after ABC News then, but then we went into another project working with some friends from the Special Forces, and we had like a 2,000 strong Iraqi army that we trained in all weapon skills, bodyguarding skills, and we put the first GSM mobile network into Iraq, then all the power grid back into Iraq. We were putting money back into society. It was very pro-Iraqi. It was brilliant. It was such an amazing thing to do. But going back to your question about how I dealt with it, I saw that boy's eyes for years after that. And it wasn't until I actually went and did ayahuasca, which I then had dealt with the chimp. I dealt with that thing. I wouldn't say I dealt with that. I made peace with it.
Out of all of your accolades, the thing that struck out to me the most was your work that you did with the child trafficking and the children down in Thailand. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, no, that was something that it gave me so much more than I ever expected. I mean, I went to do that work. It was something I stumbled across. I met a guy at a party. I had no idea I was going to end up in Southeast Asia. And I sort of, there's been a number of times throughout my career where I've tried to sort of break the mold and say, I'm not ever going to do that again. It's like when I left the Special Forces, I'm never going back to a war zone. 3 months later, I was in Iraq as a mercenary contractor. Again, then I left there. And this was another thing. I left Iraq, and it was then I'm going to redefine who I am. I've got this vision to create this and try and get this stability. And then the universe has different ideas for you. So, that was another thing. I met someone bizarrely at a party in Australia that, as it would turn out, was my interrogator from the UK when I went through Special Forces selection. I bumped into this guy.
How crazy is that?
And I only knew him because I recognised his voice because I had a blindfold on.
Before we go into this, how long were you in interrogation for, by the way?
36 hours.
What, with a bag on your face?
Not all the time. When you go into the bag, you're kept in a room. And I think there's around, I don't know, but it's like 36 hours, around about 3 hour cycles where you'll do an hour static positions, like on your knees on gravel floor with the white noise. And then you're taken out of that. So you've got the hoods on then you're taken into an interrogation room, and then you're interrogated. And then different types of methods and things. And then another time you're taken out. And I know people pay for it now, but like cold water therapy and, freezing cold, left in the cold for ages.
But when you do it on Celebrity SOS or SAS, how long do you interrogate them for?
I think they were in for 24, so it's not too bad a shift. Not too bad a shift.
In similar conditions?
Yeah, and using the proper interrogators that were actually used in the real process. So, but we don't do that in the Australian one.
Okay.
Yeah.
But anyway, bring it back to the trafficking. You bump into this guy.
So I bump into this guy and he's like, and I'm like, well, I'm doing this now and I'm trying to create this sort of stable life. And all of a sudden he tells me about this thing that they're doing in Southeast Asia. And it's like straight away my moral compass goes bang. And it's like 1.6 million kids a year sold into that industry alone. And then he tells me something which I still can't get my head around, but they're sold by their families. And to think that, it's like, you may not get on with your family, but they're not selling you into the skin trade. So give him a hug next time you see him, you know what I mean? It's like, I just can't figure that out. And it's just the whole, so straight away I was like, I need to do something about this. Then I started thinking, well, I'll train people to go in. And then some monumental shifts in my life happened and I was like, right, I'm going out there. And next thing I know, I'm in Southeast Asia, and we went out there. And first of all, we were working, like identifying kids in the brothels, like identifying the young ones. And then we were working with the anti-human trafficking department to then go and bust these places, get them out, and criminal charges. But straight away on the first event, it was proved to me that it was just a load of bullshit. And We had
What do you mean by
our first briefing, so we went in, we got all the footage, got all the cameras, got all the snapshots, and then we went with our briefing with the local forces to say we're going to go in and do this tomorrow night. And I saw one of the guys on their team with a camera, like filming the intelligence wall where all the pictures were. And as soon as I saw him doing that, I went, this is bullshit. This ain't going to work. Rightly enough, we went there the next night. The whole place had changed. No such problem here, sir. Everyone was above board, above age. You know, the whole place had changed. And from that point, I realised that you can't do anything in this life unless you go to source. If you can get to source of anything, that's what you need to focus your energy. And it's then I went into the foothills that I worked with this guy, a local guy, and another 2 guys on my team. And we went right into the foothills where the kids are sourced and brought to these satellite camps. And it was one of the hardest things for us to make a decision on was whether to take any kind of weapons and stuff. Because those routes all the way through the jungles are used by the cartels. So if they then see Western-looking guys, you know, and they find that you've got weapons on you, straight away CIA, you know, and all kinds of things will happen. So it's the hardest decision for me for the first time in my life, not to take weapons on that job, and how alone I felt because of that. But anyway,
become part of your identity.
Oh yeah, it is. It's the tools of your trade, isn't it? It's like a carpenter not having a chisel.
So are you going in there undercover?
Yeah, undercover as tourists.
What would be your reason? Okay, as a tourist.
Tourists, yeah, going through the jungles, just tourism. So anyway, we managed to identify these camps where all these, I mean, we had this guy that was taking us around, we had a truck to take us around, finding all these camps, getting local intelligence, and then we identified where these places were, and we went in and got these kids out and basically processed the kids, and we had to get there before the cartels came. Sometimes it would be after the cartels had been, and it was almost like a recruitment process. So they'd go in there, they'd say, right, you're going here, you're going there, you're going onto a fishing boat. And this is really the problem. Like a lot of time you think, oh, well, it's all the sex trade, you know, it's all the, you know, these sex holidays. That's not necessarily the issue. You know, there's the brothels on the front of it and everything else. But like we heard stories that even on the fishing boats that kids are put on there, they're raped, used and abused by the workers on the fishing boat and then thrown over the side, you know, when they're finished with them. And, you know, so you don't really understand it. And even then, back then, I didn't understand the depths and darkness of human trafficking. But for me, it was the most incredible thing we'd done. We got in and we identified the kids, we would process them, then we would get them down to the orphanage down in Chiang Mai. And it was the most fulfilling thing to actually see these kids. And I can always remember this image of 2 young girls, probably 7 or 8, actually leaving the orphanage with their school uniform in, with a little satchel across their shoulders, holding each other's hands, walking into the sunrise on the way to school. And that picture for me was like, all my dreams had come true. I was like, this is the most fulfilling thing I've ever done. All of a sudden, all the dots that were missing with me being in the special forces and the military all started to come together. And I went, right, I could assign purpose to it. I realised if I hadn't have done that, I wouldn't be here now. And where I was right now, doing those rescues, was the most fulfilling thing I've ever done. I didn't actually realise how much that was going to give me. I actually felt selfish. I know that sounds weird, but it was giving me so much. And the return on investment for me was just in nothing I'd experienced before. And when I say return on investment, I wasn't being paid.
No. And how old were the people that you were seeing?
Well, the kids.
Children, yeah.
The children, anything from 7 upwards, you know, into early teens, 16, 17 to 16.
Do you think they'd already been abused before you'd got there?
Not necessarily. But whether that's by, I don't know. I don't know. But the fact of the matter is they're brought all across the border, kept in these camps, and sometimes it's to write off family debt. You know, but it's just a natural accepted part. The thing is, when we actually did the work in the brothels, some of those kids don't want to be rescued. You know, some of the people, the sex workers.
They get Stockholm syndrome, don't they?
Stockholm syndrome, and all of a sudden they've got an iPhone. They've never had an iPhone in their life. All of a sudden they've got makeup. All of a sudden they've got a lifestyle that they could have never imagined. You know, although albeit it's horrible as it is, but the thing is that's too late. It's too late to try rescuing kids at that stage. If you need to get to source of where these kids are. So that's what we were doing. The work we were doing was amazing. So we were doing that work in rescuing these kids and getting them to the orphanage at Chiang Mai. And what had happened is our organisation was so pleased with the work that we were doing and how amazing it was. They did the worst thing they could have ever done while we were on the ground, and they spoke to the newspapers. Then next thing, all we know, because we don't know it's happening, but there's this tremor across the ground where this picture of us is going round. It's gone viral. Back in, what was it, 2011, thereabouts, it went viral. It was everywhere. We didn't even know. We were on the ground. And next thing, I get a text message saying, get out. You need to get out quickly. And what had basically happened is, like, we'd gone on to doing different operations and stuff in the jungle. And what had happened is it had gone so far, like it had gone to the US, I think it was, where they'd seen the picture, and then they got in touch with the government there and said, look, we give you millions to stop this from happening, you do nothing. And then there's a 4-man team who we don't even know who they are, that have done more than you've ever done. Who are they? And straight away on the back, they were like, there's no such problem in our country, and these guys are a bunch of criminals putting their donations and money in their own pocket, but don't worry, we're going to arrest them.
Were you still in Thailand at that point?
We were still in Thailand while this was happening.
So did they try and arrest you?
Well, there was a manhunt for us. We had to get out as quickly as possible.
How did you get out?
Well, we just got to the usual, we got out as quickly as possible and got to the airport and took the risk of not knowing whether we were going to be getting snatched at the airport or what. But
so who told you to go there then? Or like,
to go
who was paying you to go to? I don't know.
Basically, the donations, everything coming in, because the actual organisation, the Grey Man, had donations coming in from all over the world.
Right.
So it was funded by charity. It was a charity, essentially. So basically, that then paid for our operations. I also put some money in I got from Iraq to pay for, to fund me on the whole journey. But we weren't paid for it at all. It was just enough to live, living costs and everything else. And then all of a sudden, I find myself escaping back to Australia. And all of a sudden, this thing I'd found, which was, I'm going to do this for the rest of my life. I found it. I found my purpose in life. And it was such an amazing thing for me, because although it had fallen down, and that's another story, what happened afterwards, is it gave me something amazing, and that was the power of helping other people. Actually, I've been in that big mechanism before where it was military, and you think you're doing this cause for good and everything, but never had I been on the coalface to see and look someone in the eyes, like the kids walking down the street, and go, how amazing that was, how the feeling, it was just like, I want to do it forever. And then having to escape out of there, realising everything I put into it all came crashing down. I was back into Australia with no money, no nothing, very little money. Ended up back with an ex-girlfriend that I didn't want to be with, which was horrendous. And that's when I hit it hard, and that's what I've done all my life. Whenever things got tough, I would then go turn to drink. That was the solution for everything. It put up the smoke screen, didn't allow, it made everything numb. Great. We all know that's short-lived.
Yeah, of course.
And the more I was doing it, the more everything was compressing. It got to the point where I started then thinking about suicide. I was like, that path to me just seemed so much more viable than change. To change who I was and get out of the situation I was in seemed impossible.
And uncomfortable.
And
scary.
And absolutely. And the thing is, and this is why I think a lot of people that go down that route of taking their own lives, it does seem a lot simpler. You feel like you're a burden to everyone, you feel like a failure, lack self-worth, everything, and it just seems the right solution just to end it all.
And what was the turning point to stop you from doing that then?
I really think for me, at the end of the day, it was the fact that I took responsibility. I started to understand in that moment that this wasn't working, whatever I was doing wasn't working. I was, in my early 40s, and I was like, what are you doing? All I could see is this path of self-destruction behind me. I achieved great things, but for every great thing what I relate this to? And I've looked, again, like I've said to you, I've looked so much into the chimp situation. You imagine, right, on that day that I got attacked by the chimp, and I really think there's something in this, I was going somewhere that was absolutely amazing, right? I saw the circus, we were so excited to go down there, and then I went down there and I was in the big top, and then looked through this gap, I saw this chimp, and it was the most amazing experience ever in my life. And then all of a sudden, chaos reigned. The worst thing you can imagine happened. It went from one extreme
You're still flabbergasted that
to the
happened,
other. But then that pattern of what happened in that moment I then used all the way through my life. So for everything that was good, I would always blow it up.
Sabotage it.
And sabotage it.
Because that's
Exactly
the
the same
we
way.
We think the mountain is, you know, the thing in the corner, but the mountain is ourselves.
Exactly.
We sabotage ourselves
We sabotage,
more than
yeah.
anyone else
Yeah,
can.
yeah. No, we're the obstacle. It's like I truly believe that everything we want, we're all connected to it. We're the ones that we put the obstacles in. So whenever you want anything in life, you know, you want to achieve anything, it's when you have self-doubt, it's when you have fear, you're dropping a big boulder in front of you. And it's, you know, people think, oh, I've just got to get through the obstacles. I've got to line up the opportunities. The opportunities and everything are already there. You've got to line yourself up. It's the work that needs doing on yourself. And for me, in that moment, when I did hear, again, this voice that I hear from time to time said, and it did say these words when I was like thinking too much like that, you know, and having those conversations, long conversations, constant repeated language in your head. And I just went, this voice I heard when it doesn't end like this, there's more to your story. I can remember hearing those words. And then I started to think, well, how come I was at the top of my game so long ago? That took so much effort. So many people want to be a Special Forces soldier. Not many passed that. So I've proved to myself that I can have this level of excellence. What's happened in 10 years? How come I've gone from, I hate using this word, but hero to zero in that period of time? But I honestly believe, and I did it myself, I wouldn't recommend people do that when there's so much help and support out there, but if it wasn't for the fact that I had that benchmark of the past to work from, I don't think I'd have done it. Maybe not be here, maybe still on that revolving cycle of destruction, I don't know. But the thing is, it was in that moment that I went, I'm going to do something about this. I'm not going to accept this anymore. This was, for me, another break point. And break point for me is the disruptive change in habitual behaviour in line with a predetermined goal. And it's disruptive. When you want to change who you are, when you want to change that pattern of behaviour, based on the fact that we are a carbon copy of who we were yesterday, you know, that's the whole survival mechanism. We want to rely on yesterday to predict the future. Once you can break the cycle of that, that is real change. But it's so disruptive, even when it's in line with a good thing.
Yeah.
The abusive pattern of behaviour seems so much more familiar, and familiar is safe to the survival mind. And like thinking, I'm going to stop drinking, I'm going to start looking after myself. Why is that journey so scary?
When it should sound amazing.
Yeah.
But did you find what you were looking for when you joined the army, when you joined the military?
Not at all. Not at all. And I don't know if for me, like, it was an interesting year that I got attacked by the chimp. It was the same year that I saw the SAS storm the Iranian embassy in London in full view for everyone across the world. That was the same year. And that was the seed that planted for me to, you know, the seed of inspiration, if you want to call it, to join the military. And I think I spent so many years building up what it may be, that once I got there, it was so different. But also the fact that, going back to the whole chimp thing, the fact that I was then searching for this battle that wasn't out there, it was within. I was never going to find what I was looking for when I was on the wrong track.
So going back, and you could have your time again, would you still join the military?
Well, I have no regrets. I can't say how can I have regrets, right? I wouldn't change a thing because it's made me who I am today, and who I am today, I feel so blessed and honoured to be me. And when I say that, that's not coming from an ego stance.
No.
That means that I am happy. I'm so happy, and I feel this is like every day for me. I feel like I'm in the best place I've ever been. Yeah. So how can I regret my past? So I don't know, because I wouldn't have the knowledge to be able to say, don't join the military. I just feel like, I think I was a little bit messed up.
Yeah, well, it sounds like most people who've joined the military, like we spoke earlier about, are looking for something or missing something.
Yeah.
And then throw that with kicking, you know, people's dead heads and seeing war. And I'm wondering if you come out the washing machine even more messed up.
Yeah.
You probably went in.
Well, that certainly happened to me.
Yeah.
You know, I came out the back end of that thinking I was, and again for me, because as a young lad, 14 years old, when I wanted to join the military, I'd like made this whole scenario up in my head.
You're a hero.
Yeah, I was a hero, and this is brilliant, this is what I'm going. And then when I actually get there, and it's so far from the reality, is so different from the perception, I then start to question myself, who I am, and then I start to then lack confidence, self-doubt, everything, self-worth, and it creates a lot of. And then I start to think I'm the problem.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's like, so I did come out more messed up than I went in. And I'm not saying that's because we went to war and this, like, because there wasn't loads of wars when I was in. I went to Northern Ireland, I went to Iraq, I then went on to the Special Forces. I did a few things around the world, but mainly I was involved in counter-terrorism in the UK. There wasn't loads. I was wanting that Iranian embassy again to kick off. I wanted
the adrenaline.
That one thing that I saw when I was 10 years old, that's what I wanted, and I never got it. You know, we had a few little incidents here and there, but I never got the picture perfect thing. Thankfully.
Yeah.
But the thing is, again, I was there for the wrong reasons. I was there because I was looking for a war that was inside and not something externally. And this is, I think, a lot of us do, don't we? We search externally for what needs resolving internally.
And I believe that our external life is a reflection of what's going on internally.
100%.
So you were just living out the chaos that was in your mind.
Yeah. And this is, the thing is as well, I mean, the Special Forces, the military in general, they train you to be at comfort in chaos. And you can't switch that off when you decide to leave.
No, all of a sudden you want to go shopping in Tesco's.
Yeah.
And someone's coming behind the aisle, you're probably like this. Do you know what I
throwing
mean?
bean cans at them.
But do you know what I mean?
Contact, get that sniper.
But like if someone comes from behind you, surely you're like, oh.
But the thing for me, right, this is the thing, they train you to be at comfort in chaos. So what I was doing when I left the military, I was finding chaos in every aspect of my life. Whether that's relationships, my jobs, everything.
Drink, drugs,
a lot. And it's like I still have a laugh with Foxy, who I was on the show with, and it's like when we got to a point where, oh, this is nice, and it's stable and everything, you know, the seas are calm, we're like, ah, fuck this.
This
grenade.
is boring.
You know what I mean? We blow it up. And that's, you know, obviously we've solved that problem. But
it's not the same, but when I used to date men and they would be nice to me, I say to my therapist, oh, he's such a nick, like, he's too nice, he's boring. She's like, no, because your nervous system doesn't know what nice is. So we think, oh my God, that's so boring, that's so uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But it has been an honour to speak to you. As you know,
Likewise.
the show's called Getting There, because I feel like we're all chasing this island oasis. I don't know, I always thought I was chasing this destination that would mean that I'd arrived and I'd made it as such. And obviously listening to your story, it sounds like you were chasing a few different islands throughout your life, but where are you chasing now? What's the goal?
You know what, I talked about this before, but at the end of the day, I think it's important to have a goal. We're programmed to believe that we're heading for this utopia, you know, that we're prepared to live through a load of discomfort because in one day in the future, we're going to live in this utopia. The whole focus should be, the utopia should be every day.
Yeah.
So that for me is how I live now. And I live and love every moment of each day, and that's how we should live. So although I have got these dreams and aspirations, it's not about what you get, it's who you become.
Amazing. Well, thank you very much, Ollie.
Thank you.